All right, so we're talking about art influencing our life.
Mm.
Not necessarily imitating it, art imitating life, life imitating art, but how it influences our life, the way we interact with the world and with each other. Um, I know as an only child, Aquarius, I take big influence from the art that I ingest, especially movies, especially music, like with hip hop, like the lessons that are in the lyrics and the way they make you feel. So I want to talk about that. And if there's anything in particular that had a profound effect on you as a youth growing up, or even to this day as an adult, maybe one from your youth and one as an adult. So I'll let you take the stage here, Mark.
Yeah, I would say for me, when I was younger, it was just cartoons. Cartoons in general kind of just gave me the best feeling and the most notable impact um, that made me kind of direct my attention towards art. I think it was between kindergarten and first grade where I decided, like, yeah, I really like cartoons. I enjoy this. This is funny. This is entertaining. This is many things and then some. I want to work for Cartoon Network as a lifetime goal. That was pretty much the start for me. Really young. Once I got older, I would say around maybe like a few years out of college, somewhere in like the 2011, 2012 range, I started getting pretty big into anime. I was already into anime prior, but I got a lot more serious once I got out of college. And my buddy Sean put me on to One Piece. For anybody that doesn't know, One Piece is a narrative about pirates. Some pirates have abilities from getting a fruit that gives them powers. And ultimately, the whole goal, the whole intent of the show is about this character named Luffy trying to obtain what is called the One Piece. We don't know what that is, but essentially, he goes around the oceans getting crewmates to attempt to complete his mission. And yeah, there's just a lot of stories and a lot of lessons nested in and throughout. And it's made just a really large and profound impact on the way I approach a lot of stuff inside my life. But before I get to the details and unpackage that some more, I'm curious, what is your pick for the discussion
Hmm.
of today? What gave you that switch?
Well, Eek the cat.
Eek the cat?
Eek
That
the
sounds
cat.
familiar. That sounds very familiar.
Cartoon. It's a
Okay.
purple cat. And his whole motto was it never hurts to help.
What network was this on? Sounds like Nickelodeon.
Fox.
Fox. Okay.
Saturday morning cartoons. It never
Okay.
hurts to help. But here's the kicker. He every episode he's trying to help somebody and he gets beat up every single episode. He gets
Mhm.
dragged through the mud every single episode. And then he loved he loved his neighbor who was a big cat. I'm talking about Rasputia big. And he'd be like, "This is my girlfriend. Like, this is my girlfriend." And he'd have a picture, but it wasn't a picture. He had to do a pull out because she was so big. And they'd be like, "Yo, she's kind of big." And he'd always go, "Really?" Which I thought was hilarious. But he always tried to help and he always got messed up. But no, I mean,
So they were ahead of the game with body positivity, is what you're saying.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I just actually just thought of that. It didn't have a profound effect, but I thought it was hilarious that in light of our previous conversations about helping people and being the help that we want to see in the world,
Yeah.
Eek the cat was trying to be that, but he was getting beat up and dragged through the mud every single episode. But he had his own show. He was stunting. No, I think what it is, and I'll toss it back to you. What really shaped my life was Star Trek. Just the way they operated, starting with the Next Generation. My dad watched that a lot, so that was my quality time, and the way they figured things out as a captain, but also as a crew, and even on from the Next Generation to Janeway and what she was doing to the movies, and even now to Star Trek Discovery. And like I just have such an emotional connection to Star Trek, but also the way they worked things out and applied critical thinking, and everybody on that deck, on that in that crew
Yeah. Yeah.
makes
That's
it
what's up.
happen.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
my mom watched Star Trek. My mom watched a lot of classics as I was growing up, so I definitely saw my fair share of Star Trek, as well as a lot of westerns and probably every show that you could think of on Boomerang. But yeah, Star Trek, I agree. That is a very impactful show, and it just really gives a good example of a team right? It's a good functioning team, and everybody's really kind of like doing their role and doing it well, and they're all trying to make sure to align with, you know, a mission, and it's solid. That's a really good pick. I'm glad that you picked that one.
Yeah. Nah, for sure.
But
I mean, and speaking of Westerns too, I love Westerns. And I actually have a quote from a Western that was like jarring to me. That was like, wow, this is insane. I love Westerns because everybody is somebody in that world and everybody has their intention and they state their intentions. And then when you cross paths, you're trying to figure out who you are, what their intentions are, and what's what. And there's good guys and there's bad guys. And there's things that are very clear cut. True Grit is one of my favorite movies. And I was just watching it yesterday morning, that and The Hateful Eight. It's a great movie as well. But anyway, I want to talk about, let's talk about One Piece. Is there anything like one particular episode or lesson from One Piece or like revelation from One Piece that gave you a self-revelation?
okay, so this is tricky. Okay, so two things. One, I'm going to be unpackaging every episode's key takeaways on a publication I'll be doing on Substack called Markmont Plus One. So that's for one, right? So if you don't get enough of One Piece in my conversation here, you can definitely be on the lookout for a much deeper dive later. But for two, I definitely want to make sure not to spoil anything because to me and to millions of other persons, it's the best narrative of all time. So I'm going to be very careful and generalistic about what I speak on. But one thing that is very dominant in the series is being able to see resilience. The main character, Luffy, goes through a lot of very serious situations and he catches a lot of L's, right? And I think it's really cool how Oda, the writer, goes about showing you his process of solutioning when he's losing or when he faces defeat in a fight, right? Or somebody's stolen or somebody runs away. Whatever the scenario is, there's always a conflict and resolution that you're not expecting. And the way that it plays out is just very compelling because they show you how each character approaches what's going on and how they handle what's going on, right? It just gives you plenty of examples of how to kind of, just work yourself through very tricky situations. And the character development also gives you a very good opportunity to just feel like you're along with the team, like you're kind of growing with them. For me, like it has over 1,000 episodes, and countless manga. Yeah, you can just really just soak it up and let it really nest into your whole life ethos if you choose to by, just watching it on a weekly basis. You don't realize how much it's going to give you until you kind of get past, I don't know, maybe 20, 30, 40 episodes. By the time you kind of really get into the guts of it, you just on the ship. You're on the ship with them out to sea trying to find the One Piece and go on these these adventures. So yeah, that's One Piece.
Go. Let's go. I want to give you a quote from a Clint Eastwood movie. It's called The Outlaw Josie Wells. And this one like woke me up out of my sleep. Like, I'm kind of watching it like something's on, you kind of you fell asleep on the couch and you wake up and you're kind of looking at it and you see what's on, you go back to sleep. Like I woke up at this very moment this line was said and I couldn't go back to sleep after that. And it just made me realize, what kind of world I felt like I was living in. And it also relates to a rap lyric. I'm going to put them together. So the quote, it's when Josie Wells meets Ten Bears, who's a Native American, who's like the chief, the big dog in that land. And he says, I ain't promising you nothing extra. This is Josie Wells. This is Clint Eastwood's character when they meet. I ain't promising you nothing extra. I'm just giving you life and you're giving me life. And I'm saying that men can live together without butchering one another. And Ten Bear says, it's sad that governments are chiefs by the double tongues. There is an iron in your words of death for all Comanche to see. Let me run that back. It's sad that governments are chiefed by the double tongues. There is iron in your words of death for all Comanche to see. And so there is iron in your words of life. No signed paper can hold the iron. It must come from men. The words of Ten Bears carries the same iron of life and death. It is good that warriors such as we meet in the struggle of life or death.
Mm.
It shall be life.
Please do
That woke me
expound.
up.
Expound.
You
Talk
know,
about it.
Westerns, you already know how Westerns are, right? It takes place, it's historical pieces. And, you know, we know the atrocities that happened in the expansion west of America. And we can only imagine. We know what we've read. There's all these sides. Sometimes it gets forgotten. But in this particular case, obviously Clint Eastwood is a white man. He's Josie Wales. He's an outlaw. You have the Comanche. You have Ten Bears, his people, the Native Americans. And I can only imagine what Native Americans was thinking when they see a white man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's just sad because there's so much to unpack there because he says that it's sad that governments are chiefed by the double tongues. Like, if that ain't the truth, if that's not the truth of America, that the government is governed by the double tongues, you
The
say one
government
thing,
is
but
governed. Okay. I'm tracking.
it is sad that governments are chiefed by the double tongues. You say one thing and do another. And that's like the history of America. And that's exactly, you know, a big reason Native Americans lost their land. You know, it's like you either took it or you promised to work together and said you do one thing, and then another thing happened. Kind of like, you know, like in the movie, you know, Bend the Knee. Bury me at Bend the Knee. Excuse me. Said Bend the Knee like it's Boys to Men. You know, and so in this moment, they met each other, and it could have been a war because Ten Bears had all his people. Josie's just an outlaw. He by himself. He's running from some people. He's fighting some people, some government people, you know, and he's just like, look, I can't promise you nothing. You know, I know you don't trust my kind, but I'm bringing you life in my words with my tongue. And Ten Bears is like, I see you. He's pretty much like, I see you. I know you're white, but I know what kind of person you are because your tongue. But he's like, your tongue has life and death. And right now I hear the life in the words that you're saying. So they negotiated at a deep level. Like I've never seen a negotiation like that where they understood each other. And we're not just talking about two people in the neighborhood. You're talking about a Native American, you know, and then this white man. And it just made me think about life and society and America and the world that we live in and how, you know, do black and brown or even, you know, brown folks in the same space, black folks in the same space, where it's like, you know, there's a bigger enemy than us. You know, I'm not your enemy, but I can't guarantee that we may not be at odds because that is just the world that we live in and the country that we're governed by, you know, and that relates to a Big Pun lyric, one of my favorites from him, where he says, I warned you, now all they can do is mourn you. I'm born to kill, but still thrilled to put it on you. There's no regrets. Remorse only results of loneliness. Only the strong survive and strive through life as warriors. All of us die. Some of us kill, even massacre. Who want to try? Punish your will if you ask for it. I'm hazardous to your health and hell's your next stop. For real, my ish cock, the world has just stopped. I'm not the one you should be underestimating. Contest your fate, and I guarantee I'll be under investigation. Like, when he said, only the strong survive and strive through life as warriors. All of us die. Some of us kill, even massacre. Who want to try? It's like, he's like, I have to be who I am and don't get it twisted. Like, some of us, survival of the fittest, some of us die, but some of us even take it there and take it to that extent. But you have to, it's like the law of the jungle, the law of the land, the law of the concrete jungle, all of that kind of like, you know, 30 years later, for Big Pun to say that from a movie like Josie Wales and for it to connect, it just shows you how things don't really change. They just kind of stay the same. And there's a governance that we have with each other, you know? So you got to stay vigilant. You got to stay dangerous, you know?
It's interesting, right? To go from a Western to a rap lyric over a very long period of years, right? And, you know, you can't, there's this, it's interesting. You think about like the dawn of photography, videography, or the dawn of photo, and then eventually video, right? Radio, TV, right? Like, there's so much that is at your fingertips, at your ear, that makes such a large difference in how you move about your life and what you do with your life that could have a profound impact on somebody else's lives. And it's just interesting to me because we can see all those looping points. We can see all the cyclical things that happen from this narrative taking reference to that narrative, this song taking reference from that song, right? This song detailing out this moment in history. It's just interesting. The same medium that we use to communicate entertainment or to create a story also impacts the governance of how we move and how everybody, good or bad, moves as well. Right? There's protagonists and antagonists that pull influence from narratives, from social media clips. You know, the one thing that always this might seem a little off topic, but one thing that always bugs me or that kind of gets under my skin is like, you got these horror films, you got these murder mysteries. Aren't you kind of equipping those who would choose to be on that kind of side of evil or bad? Aren't you kind of giving them ammo? Aren't you giving them ideas? The answer is yes, you know? And yeah, there's just something, I don't know, that's like a whole other kind of topic of discussion. And, you know, we could dibby dab in that a little bit, but that definitely is, there's just something very interesting to say about that. Being able to see kind of how the math, it's like you think about like, you know, trigonometry, geometry, algebra, all the different versions of math, or you think about fighting, right? Karate, a kung fu, a jujitsu, different fighting styles. Oftentimes, yeah, there's overlaps and there's ways that things connect, but we don't really unpackage those much when it comes to narrative and us, you know, life, the course of time, you know, and the actual medium. Like, we don't get into the guts of how those things interconnect and what's impacting what, but they do. And it's just quite interesting to know that, but also know that without that discussion, without that analysis, we're not actually punching to the best of our, you know, effect, to the best of our abilities at, you know, year 2025 version 10,000 human, right? We're not actually, without us talking about it, without us unearthing it, we aren't doing the best with that, right? We're not seeing the flaws and making change from that. Not all of them, right? We're not seeing the wins and we're not seeing the benefits and pulling those out and using those, right? You think about podcasts. You go on YouTube, there's 10 million podcasts with 10 trillion clips of bars, quality, real quality, but you can't find it, right? Or there's too much, so you're not going to dig for it, right? You know, as the saying goes, if you want to hide something, hide it in a book, right? And it's just like, man, it's interesting. It's interesting. We have everything. I think is the last thing I'll say about that. I think this is where I was kind of trying to get to, is like, we have everything we need. Like, we have all the solutions we need, and we've solutioned against the problems that we face. But for some reason, it cycled back around because we either didn't learn the lesson or we didn't implement the lesson that was learned, right? Or we didn't take the time to see what this is saying about us, what this is saying about them, what this is saying about this situation. That's why I like anime. Because with anime, it feels as though the writers are taking their key life takeaways and putting them into the narratives. So you feel like you're not just getting the narrative, you're getting what they value, what they've learned, right? What they've experienced. You're getting that, and you're getting that spelled out through these characters, through these narratives, through these arcs, right? Through these episodes, through this manga, right? Yeah. So
right. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. There's a lot there, right? And you know, I'm not a big anime watcher. Like I watched like 80s and 90s anime, like Akira and like Ninja Scroll, and like I watch it for the way it looks. And so I like really detailed anime. Like I just love how beautiful it can look. So I'll often watch it or just have it in the background playing as something to kind of soak up. And I'm looking at framing and I'm looking at composition and stuff like that. I have trouble following animes because, you know, as it pertains to art and writing, and I'm sure this isn't all animes, but just in my experience, but I can argue that early animes, you know, especially in film format, right? It's, they tell you more than they show you, right? Where it's like, they tell you what they're thinking all the time. And that, like, it's hard for me to like even pay attention to that, take it serious, because the art form of writing, and just like in film, the best films are the ones that show you more than they can tell you. But as a writer, like with this Josie Wells that came out in the 70s, maybe the 60s, I can see when it's actually 70, Let me see here. I don't know. It was the 70s though. But to come up with a quote like that and to have lines like that, that's when it's like, wow, well, I'm telling you this thing, but what is it really saying? You know, and the role of an artist, right, or part of an artist's job is to take something very simple and make it complex, or take something complex and make it very simple, right? And so it's also exposing people, to your point, that the things that you didn't even know existed, even within yourself. And there are people that know it exists, but they refuse to even see it, right? It makes things not so black and white, right? And even from your point earlier, or you brought up the protagonist and the antagonist earlier, right? Even the evolution with films in that sense of a good guy and a bad guy, those lines have been blurred now, because now you have like the anti-hero. So there is no bad guy, just the anti-hero and the conflicting, you know, desire, want, and need for what they want to get in the end. Like, you know, Nolan's Joker and countless others that have came out, you know, from inspiration of like Nolan's Joker. And so all of this to me becomes closer to real life, where it's like, we don't need a bad guy to direct our energy. We just need to understand people's motivations, and we need to hear what they are. Again, going back to Westerns, it was very clear. Who are you? Why are you here? Like, that would be in a show, in a movie. Who are you? Why are you here? You wouldn't really see that now. But when we can understand intentions, whys, in art form, it makes us understand our world around us, especially if that art form is showing like things of like, let's say, civil rights, atrocities, just things like, especially like, say, like in the Philippines, with the natural disasters out there, or even the extrajudicial killings from Duterte. America's not exposed to that, but then somebody writes about it, and then they show you, and then we can connect with it. And so that can shape a Filipino American's view of the world and also of the Philippines, right? And so art is very important. These mediums are very important. And, you know, I agree. I think that when we're not equipped with these things, you can look to art, find it in a book, find it in a movie, and you can find the answers that you might need with the art that is all around you. And I do agree that some people just don't act on it. So then that's why these themes keep coming up in some of these animes, movies, and books. It's like, you don't get it yet? We're going to keep talking about it, because nothing has changed. You know what I'm saying? In the Philippines, in Filipino cinema, you see a lot of religion, give it to God. You see a lot of people getting taken advantage of. You see a lot of, you know, trafficking, and just these themes. And usually it's somebody getting taken advantage of and God, right? And it's been like that for 40 years. So it's like, so somebody may be like, yeah, can we just hear about something else? It's like, no, because this is our life. So we're going to keep talking about it, you know?
Yeah. I got a story to tell. I want to tell this story. So I'm going to tell this story. Okay. That's great. And you should. You should feel emboldened to do so. I have no problems against that. Why would I? But what I do have a problem with is what's happened, at least from what I've seen inside of mainstream narrative for TVs and movies in America. We've been able to see some phenomenal narratives over the last, 20, 30, 40 years. One would think with the progress of technology, with the progress of time, that we wouldn't necessarily see atrophy inside of these mediums, but we do. And why is that? Well, I think that the main reason is because of money, right? There's some goals, there's some requirements, there's some metrics of success that a lot of writers or companies that are, funding these projects are allowing to chip away at the narrative with. And I think, the reason why that's problematic is because if you have things not improving and instead they're kind of degrading or like getting too minimalistic or just not going any further, right? Then it doesn't it stands to impact in a really ungood way. It stands to just really make for a bad opportunity of influence. The board, like there's this kind of normalization that's happening right now. As a standard, like there's a normalization of normalization, right? Everything goes, everybody's accepted. Look, I have nothing against nobody. I think that a lot of things should be normalized. But ultimately, right now, we're kind of in a stage of normalization. And we're also in a stage of people wanting money, quick money. A lot of younger people want quick money. I'm gonna put out 10 million videos. I'm gonna do a podcast. Look, get your bag, right? You need to survive. I get all that. But when you have on one side, you have technology, you got social media, cameras, audio equipment, all this stuff, very consumer approachable, very easy to have access, very easy for you to do it. Great. But then you got movies and shows where the quality is kind of starting to dip. So if what they're referencing when they start to put out what they're putting out to make money is also in reference of the current standard, and that standard's not good, then you're gonna get this kind of compound effect of, I'm trying to make money and my pool of reference is actually not that good. So what you put out also stands a higher risk of also not being good. Right. Now, if we're talking comedy, something like that, that's different. I think that comedy's gone in a phenomenal direction. On the contrary, right? With comedy, you have memes, right? Memes that came out. You had what was it? Vine, where it was like short form entertainment, right? So that's ushered in like very rapid pacing, a very rapid style of trying to be, funny. Right. So we see an instance of where a couple things can align and multiply and create something amazing. But I feel like right now the quality of movies and shows has taken quite a bit of a hit. And there's just some other factors that have also shifted, right? We don't have much presence of R&B music. So where's the love? Where's the attention to detail of intimacy? Where is that? That music's there, but it's not as in the mainstream, right? So it's just, we got to be careful is really what I'm trying to say. Everything has causality to it. And I think that, right now where things are going, it's a very dicey situation that we're in, because if we're not continually like improving and pushing the standard, pushing that bar forward, right, then we're setting up a very bad spread of ingredients for people next to pull reference from. And that has problems. That has problems. When you start to look, like you could see it. You see it in shows, you see it in movies, you see the same motifs, you see the same narratives, you see the same stories day after week, over month, over year. Like we see the same stuff. They take this movie and redo that movie, right? And if we're not actually doing anything with that, if it's not improving, then we're just burning up the char. Like we're just burning the char. And yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I don't like, I hate when like we're watching the movie, we're watching the film, we're watching the series. We are watching it. I think things start to turn when it feels like the show is watching us. Like we're popular now. So let me do something that the audience may like. You know what I mean? It's different when it's an Easter egg, but when, good example of that is not Succession. What's the show I'm thinking of on Apple TV? What's the show on Apple TV?
Ascension? Dissension?
No, in the office.
Oh, in the office. Oh, man, dang, I forget
Here's
the
what
name.
it S, right?
I forgot the name. It's been a while. That's funny. That was such a popular show too.
Yeah. Severance.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So a good example of a TV show watching us and the tide turning is Severance, right? The first 2 seasons, amazing. The last 3 episodes, things took a turn. And I don't want to spoil anything, but the style, everything changed. And I felt like they were doing things that they knew the audience would love. And they started looking at us, right? And I thought it was a problem. And I'm over here like, am I the only one seeing this? I'm literally looking around like, yo. And, I went to the premiere of the finale for the last season at Chinese Theater in Hollywood. It was amazing. And it was dope. And it's like, you can see like, okay, this is a thing. This is a phenom people love. But at what cost? At what sacrifice? I think a good way that was done, 2 examples I can give you that are like really near and dear to my heart is Jumanji, the remake to Jumanji, with the Jonas Brothers. There was a scene where the Jonas Brother was, forget Nick, I think Nick Jonas was in the treehouse, and it shows a piece of wood or like the banister, and it has the name of the character that Robin Williams played. And one of the characters says, "Who's that?" Right? And forgive me, I can't remember his name. Let's just say it says Robin Williams. She says, "Who's Robin Williams?" And he goes, "I don't know, but it's his house. I'm just living in it." And then the scene continues. And it's like, see, that's how you show love to not only the audience and like put that Easter egg in there, but also pay your respect to the greatest of all time, Robin Williams, who I feel is my favorite actor of all time. And also for, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but with the remake of the reboot of Ghostbusters that came out maybe 3 years ago. And we know that one of the Ghostbusters passed away, the guy that played Egon. And the whole thing is going back to Egon's his ranch out in the middle of nowhere. And something happens, and in the end, Egon's ghost appears, and he's fighting alongside Bill Murray, the rest of the Ghostbusters cast, and they're fighting the ghost. And then it shows his spirit do its thing, and it goes up to heaven. Like I almost cried in the theater, bro. I was like, yo, that is the most beautiful thing to ever happen in a movie cinema. You know what I mean? It's just like, wow. We have this art form, art imitate life, life imitate art, but every so often a writer or whoever, I mean, obviously it has to check all the boxes, has to go up the line, and they go, you know what, the right thing to do is this, and you do it for the right reasons. Now going back to like a Severance, when it feels like the TV show is watching us, I feel like they do that for the money.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one when it's for the money. I'm glad that you brought up the example of Severance, because I'm gonna volley back the show Heroes, which I'm currently watching now. Very late to the game. I believe it came out sometime in like 2006 or 2007, somewhere in that range. You know, Severance and a lot of other shows, and definitely within the music industry, a lot of that has to do with the shift that happened towards, with specific to music. It was very clear that the executives were like, okay, separate from what we think, separate from our standards of music, we want to make sure that the youth, who are our main buyers, are going to buy. So instead of the standard being what we put our priority on, we're going to put these conversion rates, the data, the numbers, the engagement. We're going to make sure that we do what we need to do to appease the youth, right? We're going to appease, primary, user one, right? And ultimately, the reason why that has become so dominant is because the modes of entertainment, streaming, right? Streaming, social media, right? This is how you get this, right? Back in the day, we'll talk about like the 90s, right? There is no streaming, right? Internet's very new, very low speed, right? So you're going to see it on TV, you're going to hear it on the radio, you're going to see it in the theater. So even if there was just as much as there is now, the way that it got out was far more limited. So you saw a much more limited amount. So you generally saw the higher quality more commonly. We have the quality now, but we have so much more that's in the mid to low tier that gets so much more attention because of the avenues of representation. And that's a problem. With Heroes, that definitely overlapped with the writing strike, so I'm not going to fault him too hard on that, and no disrespect to any of the actors or anybody that had, a hand in that production, right? There's a lot of good stuff, right? I'm not a negative Nancy, but it was very clear to see. It was very clear to see that a lot of the decisions in the writing, and some nuances were very much leaned on the results. It seemed like they were trying to kind of do what the viewer wanted from episode to episode. It seemed like they were trying to make sure that, okay, we're going to pay attention to this blog. We're going to pay attention to this Reddit, or Reddit probably wasn't even around. We're going to pay attention to our listeners and our viewers and try to give them exactly what they want. And I feel like a lot of people felt that way with Lost, right? Very similar type of thing, where there's a lot of stuff changing and shifting, and a lot of character development that you're not expecting. But ultimately, a lot of that's happened, across these years, and it's just really, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Yeah. We can't just be changing things with an intention of money or based off of popularity of interest. We got to get to that root of, no, I think this is good and I'm going to make this good to the goodest of good. And Breaking Bad, right? I thought that things from Breaking Bad forward we're gonna like get to the next level. And don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of great shows since Breaking Bad, and there's still a lot of great shows now, a lot of great movies, but we still have such a dominant majority of like not so great, right? But like Breaking Bad was a good example of like, nah, the writers, the directors, all that, they clearly got a chance to do exactly what they envisioned, how they wanted to do it. It shows all the way through. Right.
Well, that also. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. By all means.
I was just gonna say that. Well, one, isn't that what manga is? Isn't that what anime is? Like, it just caters to like people that watch it, so it's gonna go on forever and never end. And that's a big reason why I don't watch it, because I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna.
But you don't watch it, so you don't know that to be true. You know what think from a few anime from many years ago. Right, I can tell you right now.
When I walk in a bookstore and I see the manga,
I'm gonna squash you right now. Anime is that guy. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Those writers are look. One Piece, best narrative of all time. Don't even. I'll fight you. I'll get on a plane right now. I'll jump on a cheap Spirit flight, sit real uncomfy, come to your crib, drink your coffee. You know what I'm saying? Pet your dog, and continue to bar you to death on how dope anime writers are. Nah, man, anime.
I'm not saying anime writers aren't dope.
They're not just trying to do fan service. Nah,
no, I got that. But I think you have to like at least lean towards an argument that they are doing fan service because it's popular, and why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not saying that they're being lazy, because that's what that you're kind of getting at, is that there's this laziness about certain things, right? But it just goes to show, again, like just the state of play and the nature of entertainment. And, you know, if there's a big audience, there's a big fanfare for a thing. What I do appreciate about, like, I love Korean movies. Like, I love South Korean movies. I love Indonesian movies. I'm a big foreign film movie buff, and you don't get that laziness. I mean, you see the mega blockbuster stuff that come out of like India, and there's a little bit of that, but let's be clear too. The cinematography in Indian movies are fire. They're like the best in the world. But it just shows you like the state of play, where it's like, well, we have to do this thing. Let's keep doing it, but let's not sacrifice what's actually good storytelling or good writing. And so I want to like connect this to how it, you know, interplays with being an entrepreneur, right? If you look at the writing on shows, like I'm watching one right now on Peacock called All Her Fault. It's good. It's cool. You know, Shorty from Succession is in it, and she's trying to find who kidnapped her kid. You know, and it's typical ABC Peacock type of thing. It's like procedurally generated. You do a thing, you follow it, boom, right? But if you look at Breaking Bad, or matter of fact, zoom up, not Breaking Bad, let's look at FX. Remember when FX came around? FX came around and they had the one about the cop, The Shield. They had The Shield. The Shield broke ground. The Wire broke ground. You had HBO, like these houses, right? These companies that are known to break the mold, right? ABC, Peacock are not necessarily known to break the mold. Now, Heroes was on ABC. Lost was on ABC, right? So there's that. But for the most part, they're going to cater to their audience. So there's this like two-way street of like, what do we do? So in saying that, being a fresh voice, you being you starting your own business, your own production company, your own product, you just streaming, you doing you, is enough to shake the industry up, because nobody's going to do you like you. And you have the advantage of having a fresh start. You don't have to bring that baggage over and have these expectations of an audience. So that puts you on rails that you don't even want to be on. You can break the mold like an FX, like like any of these people. That's why independent cinema is so important, you know, and there's so much access to it, and there's so many people that can do their thing. But I think if you study the greats, if you study the One Pieces, if you study the great directors and the great writers and cinematographers, and you sprinkle that into your own thing, if we're talking about like cinema, right, then you can do the world a service when your art starts to imitate life, and when life starts to pull from your art, looking for answers, looking for connection, and looking for meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you want to connect. You want to take those planets and make sure that they're sitting inside of a proper galaxy, right? Your life, your entertainment, your religion, your interest, your dues, all of it's connected. Your life is its own, you know, universe. But you're right, you know, you have something unique. And that's a great pivot and a good little preview for the next episode. I think we could talk about that, at a pretty good length. But, because we see it inside of music a lot too, right? We see plenty of rappers with great ability to rap, be it off top or written. And what ends up happening is you hear the same motifs. I got a gun so big. My chick is so bad.
How big is it?
Right?
How
Like,
bad is
my cars are so shiny. And that's
How
not all.
shiny is it?
Right? But it's a large chunk. It's a large chunk. You're talking about motifs, you're using metaphors of the same motifs that people have already rapped about, but you have a whole story that we don't know nothing about. Where'd you grow up? No, I don't. Okay, you grow up in the hood. Look, if that's your life, cool. But what happened? But what actually happened? No, that story sounds a lot like that person's story. No, what happened where you live, amongst your friends, amongst your family, that's unique to you? What gave you some sizzle that you felt so compelled to speak and write about? That's valuable. I want to hear a kid. I want to have a conversation with a 6-year-old kid and see what what he's stressed about. He doesn't know about stress yet, but what pressured him, what caused him a little sizzle throughout the day, right? That's unique to him. That's something different, right? That's something original. You think about the creator of Yo Gabba Gabba. His music was hitting, right? That's not explicit. That's not, vulgar. It's not talking about the same things. This is kid music. It's just good, right? So whatever you have, it's a matter of figuring out how to position it properly, how to frame it properly, how to phrase it properly, or if it's a story, how to tell it properly. But make sure that you're putting the right perspective and vantage point and value on you and the value that is you and the value of what you got, whether it's something that you need to get out, right? Or it's something, that is just on you. Right? Know that and don't try to. Here's. I think this is where everything kind of loops around through all the fluff, or not the fluff, through all the tricky monologuing. Is like, don't just reference it. Look, I'm a reference king. Pull reference, pull influence. That's what we do. That's what I do. Right? I got terabytes worth of reference. I got a library in my storage unit. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to pull reference accordingly, but still put the right value, right, and the right spin and jazz on what you got. You right? Look at what you got that you rock with. Don't just default, right? Don't be like, oh, let me pull this and try to make what they did a little bit better. Because again, what you might be pulling from might not be the greatest right now, this current stage of time. But also, yes, uniqueness of you. The closer it is to you, the less reference it pulls from everything else, the more unique it's going to be to you. So the end result's going to be that much more unique. If it's specific to you, the more specific it is to you, the more from your hands it is, the more from your experience, the more from your mind, the more from your pen, right? The more from your eyes, the more from your ears. That's going to be something that I couldn't otherwise get. I don't want to hear this and be like, I see what he did there. That's that person's flow, but he did that person's flow better. Like, yeah, that's all right, but now you're being compared to, instead of, man, he just did a new flow. Oh, he just told me a new story. Oh, that was a unique experience that I hadn't thought about. Look at this show unpackaging these Amish people, right? Playing ping pong. Huh, that's interesting. That's the thing about it. We're humans. Right? We live very eclectic lives, but for some reason, we keep on recycling a lot of this, let's say 1,000, right? We're recycling a lot of the same 1,000 motifs inside of narrative, the same 1,000 kind of themes and whatnot. And that's just not necessary, right? I understand, again, gonna bring it back again. You need money, you need to survive, right? So you want to make sure it works. You got patrons, it needs to be able to hit with them. Yeah, of course. These are requirements. Yeah, as an artist, if you want to live, you can't just make art for self. Somebody's got to want it. So you try to find that happy medium without selling out. It's the same thing. Just try to find that happy medium between you being unique, doing what you love and doing it good, right? And it being, slightly tweaked or slightly, synthesizer, knob tweaked so that it is palatable to your patrons or a larger audience or whoever it's going to be. You want to figure out how it is. It's like you got dishes, right? He wants a burger. You ain't got no burger. You only got these 12 dishes back here. You're not about to go out and find some beef so you can cook a burger. No, you're going to figure out how you can still give them a dish that satisfies them in a different way, even though they want a burger, right? That is what we want to do. We don't want to fall prey to to our patrons that we're trying to provide our goodness to, right? Try your best to instead you know what I mean? It's like you want to tweak what you already got, right? So that it can get to them and they rock with that. You want to get them and educate them or whatever it is. You want them to rock with what you got and try to work on what you got so that you can align what you like. It's like, okay, they don't like this card. They don't like aces. Well, let me see if they like kings because I got kings, right? Right. I don't got no Uno cards. They want Uno cards. I'm not going to give them an Uno card. This is what I got because that's you trying to do. That's you trying to just do it for them. That's you trying to do it for the engagement. That's you trying to do it for the views or what have you, right? You gotta really make sure. You got to really make sure to try to keep it as you-centric as possible.
Yeah. Well, there's a few sides to that dice. I mean, sadly, the reality of the world is that, you know, if you don't get paid off your art, somebody else will. And you got to be careful not to fall into systems. And that's why it's important to stay authentic as possible and stay true to your art. Because truth be told, somebody can do something very well. It might be a style of rap. We'll talk about musicianship and rap, right? They can do that. And then once they do that, they get attached to that style or they sign to a label and you build popularity through that style. And because they're not doing the things like you're talking about, they stay one-dimensional and continue to be exploited. And that's all they do. It's just like signing a book deal or signing a movie deal with a certain studio. And if that's not your style and who that is to you, to your true authentic self, then now you get caught up in doing the same thing. So there's that side of the dice. So I think the ultimate lesson here is to not sell out. Stay true to yourself, stay authentic, be careful of the systems that you fall into, whether it be a record label, a movie house, or even just your own subconscious self-sabotage, thinking you have to do something for the algorithm. If you can do something very well for the algorithm and it hits, more power to you, but understand that there's a deeper level and the long game in the marathon is to give us that authenticity that Mark is talking about when it comes to actually storytelling, writing, and actually exercising the craft. And that goes for emceeing, script writing, even design, like Manuel Ortiz points out, how like music and sports, design can relate things to each other and people can take deeper meaning from something as commoditized as design. And so I want to leave everybody with a quote from another movie that had a profound effect on me that I encourage everybody to watch. It's called Gully Boy.
Gully Boy.
It's called Gully Boy. Gully means street in India. It's an Indian movie. And it's probably not designated as an Indian movie. I'm just going to call it that because of my lack of awareness of what that style of film is actually called from that region, which it's from. There's a quote where he says, the main character, and the whole thing, it's like a Bollywood 8 Mile. It is fire. The dude wants to rap. He sees somebody at an open mic in a cypher, and he's like, oh, I want to do that. And then it's his journey about blowing up. And then he signs up for a open mic competition to open for Nas. The winner opens for Nas in India. It's fire. And of course, there's these themes, these thematic Indian Bollywood themes, like family, love, school, your desires, your family's desires, right? But here's the quote. He says, I will not change my dream to match my reality. I will change my reality to match my dream. My time will come and someone else is going to tell me who I am. And he said that to his dad.
Say the last one. My time will come and somebody else.
And someone will tell me who I am. So who I am will be reinforced by somebody if I just pursue that. It's like somebody will scream my name from the audience.
I think it's like a nice too. Somebody else will reflect or echo what I am, right? Versus tell me. It's like that could elicit the notion of like somebody else telling me about me as like that's kind of like they hold the clarity, like they hold the absolution of things. It's like this is semantics. This is definitely word semantics. But if I was to tweak it as a writer or as somebody,
because it's translated to English, you know.
Ah, gotcha. For those listening, the way I would internalize it to kind of help you is change that from tell to reflect. Others will reflect you. My former teacher, Peter Wong, shout out to Peter Wong, Savannah College of Art and Design, graphic design professor extraordinaire, former Atlanta College of Art, graphic design department head. We got to the last class, senior year, and he's like, okay, I'm going to show you my work. And he brings out his portfolio and he goes through his work. And it was just like the biggest mic drop that I had ever seen in my life from an art standpoint, because it wasn't his work. It was his students' work. And I was just like, see, this is punching. This is punching. This is what his students were able to do off of his tutelage. I think that aligns directly with your quote that we are ending on. So by all means, that is a phenomenal metric of success to try to strive for. And that is for you to be able to see a reflection of yourself, of your ability, of your intentions with a certain project or narrative or whatever that may be. When you see that reflected from somebody else's statements or actions back to you, to your eyes and to your ears, that's how you know you tracking. That's how you know you cooking with Crisco. That's how you know you're cooking with Crisco.
Let's get it. Well, great conversation today, brother. This was a dope one. You know, I love to talk about music, art, and meaning and stuff like that. So we got to do that more often. If y'all was feeling this, get in the comments, whether it's the live or on Substack, just get at us. Let us know if you want to talk about something as well. We're also looking for guests. So if you want to be a guest on Coffee Talk, just holla at us. I mean, nothing is off the table here. If you like to talk and you like coffee, holla at us.
Thank you for listening. Support this podcast by joining us on Substack, where you'll have access to our podcast archive and microcast of video clips. Full episodes and exclusive unreleased video podcasts are available to supporters who pledge monthly. Your support genuinely helps us keep showing up, creating, and sharing with you. Thank you for helping us pour a little more into every episode.